everything is just taken so out of context and making Elon Musk seem like the villain for literally everything now. When the facts change, so does my mind. It's like all my favorite Democrats said the Democratic Party was corrupt and joined Trump. They're blaming Trump and Elon for cutting the spending when everyone in the community knows it was getting out of hand. Like, can you honestly look me in the face and say making $2 million from taxpayer money salary is fair?
What is it trying to solve for? Efficient government, responsive government, cutting out waste, getting rid of corruption, figuring out how to get leadership to act, keeping the will of the people intact.
The bar for getting money from us, our hard-earned guap, just went way up, which I think it should have been.
It was unthinkable for me that somebody of his caliber and the people around him would be working on the government.
We have the smartest dude ever in the history of ever building systems about to rewrite what America could do with unlimited potential and build a utopia.
It's going to massively disrupt everything. Labor markets, how we do our daily things, how we live our lives, how we do our work, how we start businesses, what businesses we get into, what we deem as work, what we deem as pleasure. But the transition is going to be insane. It's going to be very, very painful for a lot of people. The thing that's front of mind for me is Doge. And what I've seen happen in the last few weeks from the Doge story is very interesting, because now I feel like so what do we do on this channel? We follow the Musk space very closely. We try to understand what's happening, right? And as he's put his fingers in all these different areas and his hands, and he's trying to go to work in a bunch of different places, I feel like we've now reached peak saturation of his name in the zeitgeist. It's just out. I don't know where else it can go. We have maximum attention on this individual, right? So that's one thing that was fascinating to me. But the thing that is even more fascinating is, if you think about the Doge effort specifically, what's interesting to me is that what it's trying to solve for, I feel like every single person at once. What is it trying to solve for? Efficient government, responsive government, cutting out waste, getting rid of corruption, figuring out how to get leadership to act in the best, I guess, keeping the will of the people intact, right? Actually executing what they're supposed to be executing. But it seems like there's a lot of pushback, and I spent a lot of time this weekend trying to explore the places where people were unhappy with what was being done by Elon and Trump and those guys. Is they have this preconceived notion that they have zero trust in the individual and zero trust in the administration, that they're actually going to do what they're supposed to be doing, right? And I think that's a very interesting thing that has happened. It's everybody wants this, you just don't like who's doing it, right? I would love to hear your thoughts on what's been happening, because I saw your post on X over the weekend where you said you're talking to people in Seattle and they seem to be warming up to the Doge movement a little bit, or to Elon, I guess. Can you just free flow for me a little bit, because I'd love to hear your take and how you're seeing it.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways this could go. I think the biggest trend I'm noticing is a continuation of the Tesla trend, which is basically misreporting and the news kind of taking everything, basically the mainstream media totally twisting the story almost to the point of reporting the opposite, which is exactly what we saw with Tesla's success. And I just feel like it's gone exponential with Doge. And now, so it's the same playbook of trying to tear down Elon, but it's with Doge, which is so interesting to me, because I read this tweet that was I've been telling all my friends that AOC is starting this big new initiative to cut waste in the government. And then they all get super excited. And then I tell them it's actually Doge. And then they all freak out. And so I think that's kind of what you're saying. But it's just, yes, you have these conversations with people, and it's the New York Times. And it was one of my friends was oh, look at this New York Times article, Elon Musk cutting funding for research. And it's the New York Times. It's just an Elon Musk quote that says we should stop giving money to academics. This is ridiculous. We should give money to research. And it's actually just a very normal statement by Elon Musk. But they put it next to the worst part of this, whatever legislation, and make him seem to blame for it, which I guess we all know. But my point is everything is just taken so out of context and making Elon Musk seem like the villain for literally everything now. And to your point, how can it get more exponential than this with him being the attention supernova? It's I don't know, but I thought that 2 years ago, and now we're here. So it's I don't know when it really stops, but it's interesting because I feel Trump won the election. So on some hand, I feel more than half the country understands what's happening with Doge and that it's a good thing. But there still seems to be this massive resistance. And I think it's so simple when it's like all these politicians, and what Elon said really struck with me is like, have been kind of grifting off the government. And that's why they're so mad that the waste is being cut. And this idea of a kleptocracy where people, they're stealing wealth from the people to enrich themselves, I think it's become so obvious. That's why all our politicians are worth hundreds of millions on these 200G salaries. It's like, that makes no sense. They're stealing the wealth from the people. And so that's what's so ironic here is I think there's a very strong case for like the people to wake up and realize that like Elon and Donald Trump are on their side. And so that's what I mentioned even in Seattle. It's like, I've been having conversations with my friends and like their parents who are all in like the scientist research community, which is where I grew up in Seattle, like super liberal, like insanely liberal, like people who get grants and like study research and science, which is like an amazing thing. But they honestly have just like, and it's funny because they've watched the DEI get in the way of their research for years at all of these institutions in Seattle, and been whining to me about the same stuff that Elon Musk is saying for years, even though they're liberal and they say they hate Elon Musk. But they've been complaining about, why is it DEI? Why are we having to go through HR training? Why did they just hire this DEI executive for millions? And so I looked up the salaries for some of these institutions that I don't want to name that are getting cut funding from Doge, blaming Elon Musk, blaming Donald Trump. It's like, okay, so your administrative costs went down 10%, but you're framing it as this $100 million budget shortfall. I Google your salaries. All the executives are making like $2 million salaries. On top of that, all the indirect costs for employees. So I'm like, wait, you're blaming, and they just made this massive DEI initiative. So it's like they're blaming Trump and Elon for cutting the spending when everyone in the community knows it was getting out of hand. There needed to be a correction. This was inevitable. And you could save the money. That what the most ironic part is, if these administrators cut their salaries from millions of dollars funded by the taxpayer, this wouldn't be an issue. But instead of pointing the blame at themselves for mismanaging, they're pointing it at Elon and Donald Trump. And I think a lot of people are waking up to that, because it's like, oh, we spent money on redoing the whole bathrooms for millions of dollars because that was like a big DEI thing, instead of funding the research. And all the employees know that. And they're like, we've been dicking around not spending money good. So then when the government, so I think like, at what point do people think independently? I think that's what it's boiled down to for me. It's like, that's what it takes to kind of break out of the box. It's like, that happened to me. Like I was supporting like RFK Jr. and like very against Trump up until like 2 months before the election. And then it just took a lot of like understanding, being like, why is Elon getting so involved? Like maybe Elon's not just automatically an idiot who's crazy, which is what the media has been saying about him forever and always wrong. Like maybe he is actually looking into stuff and smart, like he always has been, like I know him to be, and sticking his neck out to do the right thing. Like, maybe that's happening exactly again. And then you start looking into it. And so I don't know. It's a long story short of saying like, I think like we're all going to look, I think the hate is at an all-time high. And because I think it's kind of like the last kicks from the establishment to trying to like tear down Elon Musk. But at some point it's like, I feel like Trump won, the secret's out that this is good. But I'm very curious that you guys are, because I feel like we're such at a divisive point in America, with like people being so more still polarized than ever. But at some point, do we rally around Trump and Elon and just try and support America? Like at what point does that become the status quo?
Great. I love where you went. Hans, did you want to go first before I go down a warpath here?
I mean, the only comment that I would have there is it's just hard for me to gauge from here, like how much is it actually polarizing? Like how many people still believe in the New York Times and, the media? Like, at least for those of us who've been following the Elon Musk story closely for a long time, like it's been obvious that the more Elon accomplishes the things that he sets out to accomplish, the more hate he gets from the media and the establishment. And it almost gets like it's the worst right before he actually accomplishes like the next big thing and whatever it is. Like you kind of go through this cycle. And so it seems obvious that that's what's going on now, which then makes you question, okay, why is the media like exactly, opposed to these really important and beneficial to humanity things like over and over and over again. So I just, it's hard for me to get a feel for how many people still believe what they're being fed by those people. I heard a comment from, someone on X the other day that was saying that they felt like a lot of Democrats were coming around to Doge, and then someone else was like, no, I keep hearing every time I turn on the news, it's still like blah. And I'm like, well, those are not necessarily the same things. Like, Democrats are not the news, and the news is not Democrats. Like, it used to be that was really, almost perfectly overlapping, but I don't know that it is anymore. And so, yeah, that's the thing that I'm kind of watching for, is how much are people in the Democratic Party specifically waking up to the fact that the news is, much more like almost pure lies, not pure truth.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. What has been historically true is that, just based on a lot of the studies and polls that have been done in the last few years from Gallup and all these other places, there is a much stronger correlation if you're a Democrat to willing to trust mainstream media than if you're an independent and a Republican. And if you think about what is the lean of the legacy media what has the lean been for the last few years and almost decade plus, is very anti-Trump and increasingly anti-Elon. And at some point, I'm afraid to call it propaganda, but I'm just going to use the word propaganda. That level of information pushing is going to have an effect. And what is that effect going to create? A total mistrust of those individuals. I think a lot of this, and I think it is I think it is significant, because I did use quite a bit of my time again to watch different YouTube channels out there that are mostly left leaning, not even legacy media, just independent media. And there is a very, very clear disdain for Elon and Trump. But when you dig into it, what is it? They just don't trust them. They're like, Elon's getting in there because he wants to take all the power for himself. Trump is getting in there because he wants to take all the power for himself. It's never hey, they're democratically elected. He's a democratically elected leader. He has surrounded himself with the people he thinks he can execute the goal with, just like any other administration, right? And then they're trying to do it. It's no, they're in there because they're trying to steal America. They're trying to do all these things. We don't trust them. So it's okay, so that makes sense. If you spend all those years saying that these people will inherently, they're fascists and Nazis, and they're going to destroy, they're going to steal democracy, they're going to end democracy, a percentage of the population is going to be impacted by that, right? So the only way to come out of that is through execution. And this is where I get really excited, because what does execution mean? Execution means that the U.S. will have a balanced budget. Execution means that they're going to lower inflation, that if they're able to cut as much cost and waste, fraud, and abuse from the government, that implies that at some point there'll be lower taxes for everybody. You're going to have a more responsive government to the will of the people, and all these things culminate to an America where you have a government that actually functions, that actually works, right? And what's the best way to build trust is to make things that people actually are wow, that's the thing. It's doing the thing that I want it to do. Great. Awesome. Right. So I think until that happens, we're going to have this constant, I think we're another year and a half of just punching this whole movement, this whole Doge movement, this Elon thing, this Trump thing. They're in there for themselves. They're not in there for us, because that's what we've been told. And that's what we think is going to happen. And it's not going to be until they execute on the goals of Doge that we're going to see something different, because everything else is downstream of Doge, right? Good policy, good governance, a government that reinvests back into its citizenry, an aligned government. All these things only happen if you have an efficient government. And that's the reason why we're here now with 17% approval ratings in Congress, and people, Democrat, Republican, Independent, everybody thinks the government's corrupt in some way. We have different ways of fixing it, but everybody agrees it's an unresponsive entity. You cannot have a responsive entity unless it's efficient and it works the way it's supposed to work, without layers and layers and layers of bureaucracy. Doge is it's a first principles approach to fixing governance. You have to get the government to be efficient. And by default, when you have an efficient government, you have a responsive government, right? So that's my tirade.
Totally. And the one thing I wanted to jump in with is like, okay, why do people hate Elon and where does this negativity come from? I think it's so much of it is like an algorithm, the algorithms that are on our news feeds are controlling our thoughts. And we don't realize like that, like we all fear this, like, oh, the AI is going to take over and be evil. And it's going to be this horrible thing. To me, it's like, that's already happened. That's what your news feed is when it tells you something bad about Elon Musk, or like it just, the news feeds optimize for fear and negativity, and those are stronger human emotions. I think there was like a really good Netflix documentary on this, but that's why we've seen the radicalization of ideas since social media, and you get reinforced in your little thought bubble and see everything twisted through the filter of Elon's evil, and that actually brings you like satisfaction to read that, and then you click on it. So like actually what I really think has happened is a deep manipulation by these algorithms that are way more powerful than we can understand, manipulating on negativity, and that's a much stronger emotion than positivity. And then that's just the runaway effect. So it's not like there's like, oh, we're going to take down Elon Musk, he's evil. It's like we're literally a failing media company, and our number one article was Elon Musk is a drug addict. Who gives a fuck if he is? We need to come up with some more dirt on Elon Musk or we're toast next quarter. That is, and that's just the cycle. That's what like gets me really frustrated about it, is like, I just feel like my friends are like manipulated, and they're just like so uneducated and uninformed, and getting manipulated by like these AI algorithms. And it's super unfortunate. And the only way to actually read through it, and what really helped me or like try and understand the world better and politics better, is going to the source. And I think that's a big thing people have lost. It's like everyone who's hating on Elon Musk has not watched him talk. Everyone who's making fun of him for the Hitler salute, it's like, first of all, you're making fun of someone who has autism for an awkward gesture. That is fucked up. I'm sorry. That actually like pisses me off, that they're like making Elon Musk mannerisms like seem like he's being evil. It's just like, you're a bad person for bullying someone like that. Like, I don't know. It's like, what made you think that was okay? Like, what made you think it was okay to like be in a conversation like, oh, I hate that guy, I wish he dies, he's awful. Like, that's okay to say about Trump and Elon commonly in Seattle. It's like, have you not lost your mind? Like, what? Yeah. Like, that is so rude. And so like, I just feel like people don't even realize how much they've been manipulated into someone they've never met is automatically the worst person on the world. And they haven't even had the independent thought to watch 5 minutes of him just speaking interrupted. It's like, if you ever watch Elon Musk talk for 5 minutes, most of these people are no, but they automatically assume they hate him. And then I'm talking to them and I'm like, bro, I've actually met Elon and I've worked with his companies. He's super dope. I've met other billionaires. They suck and they're assholes. He's actually a homie fighting for our side. And that's why they're trying to take him down, because he is David. They are Goliath. Elon Musk is the little guy. He's been the little guy. He's been the underdog fighting for all of us. And it just pisses me off that it's the opposite gets like portrayed. And it's just like, I think kind of like a huge manipulation of the zeitgeist's understanding of the truth that Elon Musk is negative. And it's like, he's literally working for free for the government. All these other politicians are getting paid. It's like, how dumb do you got to be? It's like, this guy's not taking our money. These guys are. Like, I don't know. It's just, so I've been really frustrated with it, but I've been trying to like channel it into like positivity when I have conversations, and be like, just talk about the optimism and positivity, you know, and be like, I think it's great. Actually, I saw someone on X reply to my post about that. So I'm trying to take their idea, but like that has been what's worked for me, you know, like talking to people about the budget cuts or the Doge thing. It's like, you know, you're right. But like, look, the bar for government guap raised. That's what's happening. It's not that complicated. Government was giving away way too much money, went bankrupt. The bar for getting money from us, our hard-earned guap, just went way up, which I think it should have been. And it's like, you explain it to that, and it's like, yeah, like shit's going to get cut that we think is important. That's part of the haircut that we're doing. Like it's going to be hella easy to find controversial stuff. And so of course the media is going to run away with that. But the reality is we all know the government's this ridiculous wasted thing. So I think once the conversation of like raising the bar, and then you talk about and then you bring up, it's like, are we really on the side of these research organizations who just paid themselves $2 million? That's triple the salary of Rivian CEO RJ Scaringe, who I think is like the most overpaid joke CEO in the game. He's making $650K a year. He owns no stock in his company. He's just getting rich on his salary. And he at least owns a public company that came up with that guap that's not coming from taxpayers. And then you got these charity people making $2 million a year in cash salary. Like, are you kidding? That's more than the most overpaid CEOs I could find. So, and they're the ones sending the emails saying Elon Musk is a greedy guy. And it's like, what? So at what point does like So, and I thought it was actually interesting because that you can Google a lot of these salaries. That's what I found. So like I'm on the borderline now of like, how involved do I get? Like how many of these Seattle institutions are going to try and piss off and blame Elon Musk before I come in and start analyzing their financials? And I'm like, oh, is it Elon Musk's fault or is it your fault? Because you're paying yourself $2 million of the taxpayer money because instead of investing in next generation research and all this innovation, you decided to do a DEI remodel of the bathrooms that was pointless. And that's where the millions went. So it's like, I don't know. And they don't want it to be uncovered. And so I'm ranting a little bit, but I think that's a big reason is I hate Elon Musk. I hate Trump. I'm realizing a lot of the people have stuff to hide who are saying that. It's like, oh, like, can you honestly look me in the face and say making $2 million from taxpayer money salary is fair? Like you genuinely think that's fair? Like, I don't think so. And they don't want to answer that. So it's like,
and maybe it is fair, but if it is, show me the results. And then like you ask for the results and it's almost negative results.
Yeah. On top of that. And I think I just am seeing it play out so clearly in my little world here, but I can almost like see the pattern in like the homeless crisis, let's say, or like all these high paid salaries to try and tackle that issue. So it's just this issue of like, oh, we're like a nonprofit, so we're good, but our people make more salaries than even my friends who work at startups. Like, I don't know. The more I've been diving into it, I'm like, damn, like this really was a grift. Like,
yeah, it's just such a massive disconnect from like reality and perception. It's like a direct opposite scenario. So let me ask you this: do you think that there is a path for more unity in the country around this effort, even with Trump and Elon leading it? Like, do you think there is a pathway for the country to actually be aligned with the outcome, as long as the outcome is positive, right? As long as Doge actually delivers on its promise of not overstaying its welcome, doing it legally, following due process, making sure they're not enriching themselves, all that stuff that we assume is not going to happen, right? Like they're actually going to do it in a lawful way. Like, do you think there's an actual pathway to create unity around this Doge movement?
Honestly, not sure, but I do think the culture is changing a bit. Like we did have the election and like, I don't know, like I think people are talking about it a lot more freely. Like, I don't know. So I do think it's changing. I just think it takes time but I feel like to answer your question, like we've already kind of passed the worst point, which was before the election, I think. And now it's just slowly getting better, but it's just going to take a long time.
So while we were talking, I did an interesting query on Perplexity. So I asked it to do a sentiment analysis for just YouTube videos and then use views on YouTube videos with a pro-Doge sentiment as proxy for like how do real people feel about Doge versus the legacy media. And it says 100% support for Doge, 0 opposition. They couldn't find any major anti-Doge videos on YouTube, period, other than just like reporting on the legacy headlines that were saying like, the judge stopped Doge. So I then went and did a follow-up query on YouTube, and I am seeing similar, like I searched for the Department of Government Efficiency as a threat to democracy, and it's just like little 1 or 2 minute excerpts from like news coverage. There's not any like authentic YouTube content that is generated that thinks that this is a terrible idea that I can find. So I just thought that was like kind of shocking, actually.
Well, I mean, I think it aligns with the sentiment that I'd be curious because maybe this is a reflection of like the Department of Government Efficiency, getting the government to work the way it's supposed to work. I find it hard to believe anybody would disagree with that. So maybe the interpretation is people are not, again, they're not against Doge, they're against Elon and Trump. Like it's the messenger that they hate, not the message, right? It's the lack of trust for the people that are executing, not the actual execution of the program. If that is because, I was on YouTube over the weekend. I saw a lot of videos that were extremely critical, downright like vitriolic against Elon and Trump and what they're trying to do, right? But they were against Elon and Trump. They were not against what Doge is. So maybe that's the result. Is like it's just they hate Elon and Trump.
Gotcha.
That's what it is.
Well, here I'll do some follow up perplexity sentiment analysis and see what we get.
We have our
on Elon
on staff researcher.
But
love it.
I feel like this is a big
Perplexity is a baller researcher, by the way.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, I like that we're using AI in the middle of the to help us scheme here. But you actually said something, Farzad, that I thought was interesting, which is like, what if they actually execute? Then people will get it. And so in many ways, now I'm thinking of like the parallels to like Tesla and like pre 2017, 2018, or just around then, when it was like before they started making money on the Model 3, and like the mainstream hate was ridiculous, but we all kind of knew this secret that actually Tesla had dope technology, which is very similar now. Like mainstream media saying Doge is bad, Elon's evil, when we all know the secret real truth. They're actually fighting on behalf of the American public, doing all this awesome work that's super important. And now we're about to see the results of that play out. So when I think about it, it's like I try and get like more like active in the scene. It's like that's why I really respect what you're doing, Farzad, and it's like putting out all this dope content about it, like making a career out of it. Like I think it's a big opportunity. Like that's why I'm gonna get hyped. I'm getting more inspired right now. I'm like, I should make videos on why Doge is dope, why it's working. Like I'll explain it just like I explain Tesla stock. I'll get a huge following from it. It'll help spread the word. Like the movement is ripe for the change, and I think there's a huge opportunity. That's a low hanging fruit for influencers to explain Doge and why it's dope. And I'm saying it even so other people do it, because I want, like, you guys should do it. Like the word should get out there. Like make a video on every Doge initiative and like why it's awesome. And like that is, to me, is like hopefully that opportunity to tell the story positively like starts to like become a growing part of the zeitgeist, because that's kind of what happened with Tesla, and hopefully like we'll be able to repeat that again. But frankly, I do see like massive opportunity everywhere. And like I just made my first land buy in Texas, and so I'm out here like doing the same thing. It's like every one of my friends are like, Elon's an idiot, Texas is the dumbest thing, Trump's the worst, blah 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 blah. Like I'm the opposite way, 10 steps ahead, making the opposite financial decision, putting my money where my mouth is, and it's going to pay off huge. And so I'm just like, I don't know, I'm trying to like balance this whole thing of how this cycle plays out. But I also think it's like, on one hand, like being a contrarian is always where the opportunity is as an investor. Like alpha is in that skepticism. So like there's like where like there's everything is like an equal opposite reaction. So all of this like negativity, like there's an equal positive opportunity to like tell the truth. And I don't know, I hope that wins out. Maybe that's the way out.
I think that's a very interesting thing you said, because like even, by the way, kind words, I appreciate that. But like my approach is like, I don't even think of it as like I'm trying to create content specifically around Elon or specifically around Tesla. I just happen to be extremely interested in what Elon is tackling, right? It's almost like the Elon is the signal for vast positive change in really big domains. He has this formula that he has figured out how to find those places, how to activate people around him to go help him do it, and then execute in that space so that it 10x's or 100x's better, right? Like this is literally his entire arc. PayPal disrupted banking. I made a post about this on X over the weekend. I was thinking about, I'm like, holy shit, yeah, Doge is literally the exact same thing. PayPal disrupted banking. SpaceX disrupted rocketry through reusable rockets, right? Tesla disrupted automobile with electric vehicles and self-driving cars. X disrupted media and legacy media with freedom of speech. Doge is disrupting governance with transparency. What's his face? Boring Company is disrupting transportation with tunnels. Neuralink is going to disrupt, the medical and communications space with freaking brain chips. Starlink has completely disrupted the internet. So like this guy over and over and over and over again, there's a signal here that's like, yo, like he understands how to disrupt places that need disrupted better than anybody else, by far, by a factor of 10. When it comes to like the size of the impact, his wealth is directly correlated to those spaces, right? Tesla disrupts, they become gigantic. They're the $1.2 trillion company. Boom, he has a big cut of Tesla. Okay, he gets a couple $100 billion. SpaceX, same exact thing. He has a huge chunk of SpaceX. It becomes extremely valuable. Boom, huge chunk there. X just turned a gigantic corner around profitability. It's more profitable than Twitter was before it was taken private. Like that's another arc. It's like, okay, so at this point you have to convince me that it won't that the opposite will come true with Doge. Like the likeliest outcome is a very high level execution against the goals of that movement. Like even if you take X and Tesla, right? What was the biggest criticism of X? It was, well, Elon is socially awkward. He's on the spectrum. He doesn't understand social interactions. Therefore, the Twitter acquisition is dumb because he's bad socially. He doesn't get it, right? But here's the thing. What was the thing that Elon identified? It's freedom of speech is the core tenet here. The most important thing about the X acquisition is freedom of speech. Legacy media and independent media and social media have done a really bad job of upholding freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is a catalyst for the best type of content, because by default, the content that is most controversial is going to be the ones that get the most views. And if you put a limit on what can be discussed, all of a sudden you dramatically lower the amount of content you can make and the amount of money you can make from ads from that content. So you have to use freedom of speech to create a scenario where most people can talk about whatever they want, right? With Doge is the same exact thing, but it's transparency. It's like, yo, open up the books, tell us what the hell you're spending money on so that we can fix it, you know? And it's like, okay, so let that be the precursor to everything else that comes down the pike. He is signal, dude. Like that's the thing. Like I don't understand when people are like, you know, well, how can you trust this guy? I'm like, just look at his track record. Just look at his track record. It's not that hard. Just look at what he did. Look at what he did. Like you said, go to the source. I think that the go to the source thing is the best. And I don't want to sit here and be like, yo, Elon, everything Elon does is perfect. No, of course he has fumbles and he says stupid shit sometimes and he makes dumb decisions sometimes. You know, like the whole thing about sending the U.S. citizen criminals to El Salvador is a good idea. No, it's a dumb idea. They're citizens. They should be in the United States. I digress. He's not perfect, but he's a clear signal. He's a very obvious and clear signal to huge disruptive change. And as an individual, it was unthinkable for me that somebody of his caliber and the people around him would be working on the government. Because in my head, it's like the government is this lost cause, dude. I was like borderline depressed, after I had my kid, and I'm like looking around. I'm looking at the political landscape. I'm looking at Kamala being pushed through without a democratic process. I'm looking at a president that's half dead, trying to tell us that, hey, this is going on. He doesn't even know where he is. And I just had a child, and I'm like, well, the future looks fucked up. What the fuck? What happened? Right? And I'm like, okay. So, and then all of a sudden it seems like, okay, we have some actual competent people in the administration. They're not all perfect, but holy shit, is it a gigantic improvement? And one of those individuals happens to be an individual with one of the best track records with high level execution that benefits the people that are part of that movement. It just so happens Doge is part of America's government. Like, I don't know, man.
Like,
tell me, am I stupid? Am I stupid?
Well, I like it because you know where I feel like we're at in the conversations I had, which is why my tweet, which Elon actually retweeted, which I thought was hilarious, is the amount of common sense it takes people to get on board or at least admit they're kind of hyped is basically zero. Because people like who are super liberal are like, Elon Musk has gone crazy. Like, golly, what do you think? It's like, I'm in front of like the whole, my girlfriend's family. Like, it's like, oh God, you know what I mean? And it's just like everyone is just so liberal. You know what I mean? It's But it's just like, and I'm like, honestly, like, I don't know, like every time I work with Elon, like, or like worked with one of his companies or anything, they've been great to work with. And like, I can't think of one person who's led organizations through more success and managed more employees on more complex tasks across more nations. Like, I can't think of a more similar person who's run stuff similar to government in the world. Like, he's already working with world leaders. He already, so I think if anything, I think there's a good shot. He actually has the perfect credentials to do a really good positive impact. Cause I can't think of, that's all he's done his whole career is run these tens of thousand employee organizations at the highest, most efficient level. And I think that could be good energy brought to government, frankly, cause I feel like we're a bit inefficient if I'm being honest. And that's why I tell, and then it's like, and then people are kind of like, well, actually, like, fuck it. Like maybe Elon is worth a shot because they're, it's like, so I don't know. I kind of like, I'm getting hyped on where we are this conversation because I think our frustration is like us been yelling at the wall for so long and kind of like no one getting it. But then at some point that'll cave, and just thinking through like these conversations I have. And I just feel like, I don't know, like 50% of my friends this election, maybe more, voted Trump, who all have always been Democrat. Like
that's like, such a huge turn.
It's a huge turn that I've never
felt.
What
was the biggest catalyst for them specifically? like post election now, like what, and post Trump getting into office, what was like the core thing that made him turn?
That's a good one. I mean, I think Elon was a big part of it, but I think it's so hard to pin it on, but I feel like it's like this frustration that you couldn't say the truth. Like there was this fascinating discussion. Oh, this is another one I had with my family, and they were talking about cults and how a cult, and it got to the point with religion where we all know a religion's crazy, but we can't say it's crazy because otherwise, like, we get like roasted or massive social penalties essentially. And then like I hear them for this 20-minute conversation, and I'm like, exactly, like that's like they them. Like we all had to listen to people say their wrong gender and know it was their wrong gender and pretend like it was okay for, I don't know. I don't want to get too political into that, but it's just, that's one example. And it's just like things like that, where it's like the DEI got pushed too far. I think that is like the biggest sentiment that I heard from even like every Democrat agrees with that too, except for like the really diehard people. But like most of the people in Seattle are like, this just got too far. Like we're trying to accept everybody. We're trying to be all love and welcoming, but it just got pushed to like this weird thing where like we have all these weird DEI rules, and if you don't follow
weaponized sympathy,
you're instantly evil. And it's like, no, you just put yourself on a little hill and made me be tiny based on this new rule that you just invented. You're actually mean because you're putting me down as the white knight of holier than thou, that woke splaining movement that I get hit with in Seattle nonstop. It's just like, and then I'm like, no, like you don't get to decide which word I'm allowed to say now because you decided it. It's like, why don't you take that word out of your vocabulary?
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, I'm getting carried away, but like, I think that is the sentiment that I just explained, that I think like has kind of like had Trump break through, because even like all these liberal people are just like, yeah, like shit was ridiculous the past 4 years. And we all know it. And that's why I was like, fuck it. Trump's not perfect, but he's a change. So,
yeah.
And then the fact that I personally think I've become way more bullish on Trump and Elon the more I've looked into what they're doing, as of like, oh, this isn't just Elon supporting a new politician being evil like the media. This is like, holy shit. Elon's like you're saying, far as I like, he's getting involved. Like he's about to like, he's like sleeping in DC with his new like squad of like the nerdiest, most elite 20-year-olds he's recruited to scheme on shit ever. Like this is like Elon is going balls to the wall to like disrupt this as if it was a problem at SpaceX. And that is like, whoa, that's like way better than I thought of what was going to happen, of even just Elon beating Trump. So we would have to stop regulation that was fighting Elon's companies. And that's a benefit to America. No, now the benefit to America is we're getting a whole disruption of government by the master himself, Elon Musk. I mean, a pièce de résistance of just systems creation here is about to occur for civilization. We have the smartest dude ever in the history of ever building systems about to rewrite what America could do with unlimited potential and build a utopia. Like this is like, whoa. And so I think that
here's the crazy thing. Can I jump in real quick, Gally, for like a second?
Yeah, please,
and you know how they're doing that by just returning to the Constitution. Like they're not passing new laws. They're just letting the country work. That's the craziest part of this whole thing. Like it's not like, oh my God, they're going in and redoing all this. No, they're just working within the confines of the Constitution. It's like, okay, that's the good outcome. Wow, maybe the guys that built the Constitution in the first place, anyway, go ahead.
Cutting back a whole bunch of weeds that have overgrown the system that was built in the first place for centuries.
They're not doing anything new. They're just letting the thing work the way it was supposed to before decades of corruption took over. Yeah.
So we're all disruption fans. I don't know. So I feel like there's a lot of like, I've been trying to think of like a lot of different like schemes to like help, write history the right way. Honestly, because I just like,
I'll tell you one thing that sort of like came to me over the last few days that was like pulling on this thread of like modernizing government through Doge, so it's actually maximally responsive. I don't know if you guys can hear my kid like screaming his face off. He's having such a good time today. He's having a great day, my little baby Clive. I love him so much. I can't wait for you to have kids, Gally. Oh my God, I'm so excited for you. Anyway, so the one thing I was thinking through is if you think about the timing of Doge, it couldn't have come at a better time. Like forget about who's leading it or whatever. Think about the concept of modernization of the government so that it's maximally aligned with the will of the people and it's maximally efficient. The disruption we're about to go through with artificial intelligence and robotics is going to be fucking crazy for the next 5 to 10 years. It's going to massively disrupt everything. Labor markets, how we do our daily things, how we live our lives, how we do our work, how we start businesses, what businesses we get into, what we deem as work, what we deem as pleasure. Everything's going to get completely just transformed, okay? And if you don't have a government that is responsive to the will of the people through insanely disruptive change, we are fucked beyond belief. Because what happens if you don't have a society that's able to absorb disruption properly? Two things happen. Either it devolves into a dystopia where the power and the influence very rapidly congregate to just like 3 or 4 people or 3 or 4 parties, right? Or you have war because you have so much disruption and so much chaos that people are like, we can't do this anymore. We have to fight to fix this thing, right? It leads to a very poor outcome. And with a government efficiency movement, what's very interesting about that is that it optimizes, it maximizes the chance of the government to be fully responsive with the will of the people, especially during times of insane change that's coming regardless if we like it or not. Like self-driving cars are going to be great, but they're also going to displace car drivers. Humanoid robots are going to be great, but they're going to disrupt warehouse workers. There's going to disrupt factory workers. It's going to disrupt physical labor altogether. And yes, in the end, it'll be better, right? But the transition is going to be insane. It's going to be very, very painful for a lot of people. Like the analogy I use is if you think about what happened when the United States shipped a bunch of its jobs from the Midwest and all these other manufacturing cities to say China and Mexico, right? It's like very equivalent to a human or robot coming in. It's like, well, it's cheaper labor and they'll just do it for us, so we'll just let them do it, right? What happened to those cities? They got destroyed. Why did they get destroyed? We didn't have the proper things in place for us to have enough jobs available for those people who jump into. We didn't have a vibrant enough economy or a vibrant enough and responsive enough government to try and go in and figure out, okay, we have this situation in Detroit, we have this situation in Appalachia, we have this situation in the Midwest. Let's figure out how to fix it. Instead, you have this uniparty in government that's just fucking fighting politics 24/7, trying to get this little thing for their respective whatever, and then nothing gets done. And then we miss our budgets 24/7, and then we have to print more money, which causes inflation. And then there's a bunch of finger pointing, right? It's just unless you have a very efficient government that's able to address the will of the people, especially through disruptive change, we're going to have a huge problem. Like the timing of Doge is nuts. Like it's almost like if it didn't happen now, I would have been significant. I would have been very, 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 very worried about the outcome of the future, because we're going down the wrong path with health outcomes. We're going down the wrong path with debt. With debt, there's so many things we're going down the wrong path of. So anyway, I was thinking about that quite a bit over the weekend. Like the timing of it has been insane. It almost feels like prophetic. I don't even know.
Totally. And it's going to be like there's so many what kind of. And there's always been relationships with the government and the people like NASA. Like we have some stuff like NASA's like space is the big new technology thing. So now AI will have to develop some sort of AI like regulation or standard or I don't know, something. And I know that's a controversial topic in itself, but my point is like to what you're saying, like government's gonna have to get involved. Like, do robots vote? Do they get social security numbers? Do they pay taxes? Can they own a corporation solely without humans? Like, where do we draw the line on all that? Like that's gonna be super crazy important. And you think about like, oh, the government used like there was Standard Oil, they broke up the oil company, or there's always been these weird relationships with government and industry throughout the history of every sort of civilization. And so I'm very curious of where's the next chapter of that playbook, because we've had now the government having these relationships with NASA for Boeing, Lockheed Martin, blah, 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 Northrop Grumman. Those are the military contractors as well. And you have the medical companies like the Pfizers, the blah, blah, blah. I think we're going to get a new wave. And those companies, it's just kind of like the change. Like they're led by old people who are now kind of dinosaurs, grifting off the system, great intentions at first, but now they're just making money. Maybe the companies got stolen by people with bad intentions. And it's time for new things. Like you look at Anduril. Our VC firm's a tiny investor in Anduril, but they're going to like be one of these new ones, or like Palantir. People are super stoked on Palantir. And like, I think they're a crazy company that could bring insane efficiency to the US government if the government partnered with them. And so, and like Tesla, like is a, how do we make the roads adapt to self-driving cars? Like building the highway infrastructure was one of the greatest projects in the US. It like connected the country, blah, 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 opened us up. So now it's like, okay, now we have a massive innovation in transportation technology. This is like going from the horse to the car. And so maybe we should rethink about the infrastructure around that. Like, do we need charging depots in cities? Or like, I don't know, but I love where you're going with this, Farzad, because it's like, how fun does this get? Once we cut the fat, US goes profitable. And now we have Elon deploying capital, arguably the greatest capital deployer of all time, deploying capital from the taxpayers. We've had a system that has been the worst capital allocator. That's what I should say. Capital allocator of all time has been the U.S. government. I would argue getting worse and worse each year allocating capital. It's like
with the worst outcomes.
Exactly. Yeah. And so now the potential for having some of the best capital allocators ever to allocate the capital of the taxpayer. And I thought Andrea James had a really interesting tweet, which maybe I misinterpreted, but she's a really cool Tesla community person from a long time ago, also Seattleite, I think, but had this tweet about fiduciary duty and how it's like when you have someone's money and you're trained as a financial advisor, you like go through this thing of like kind of like a monk. It's like their money's more important than mine. Like they put their time into earning this money. I have a responsibility for it. And that responsibility is a fiduciary duty. It's like a new type of legal term where you have to act in the best interest of that money. So when you think about the government taking our money as well, like there should be a similar, if not higher standard. That, which is like, you have our money. Like that is so valuable. And so to me, this idea that we don't care the efficacy of the capital allocation of the government is a joke. Like I care about so maybe like even now this conversation's got me fired up, a new way to think about it. It's like, you think our old government was allocating our capital efficiently? I would say no. And we're going bankrupt and that was killing us in a gazillion ways. Now we have a shot at reallocating capital from, I would say, just mathematically the greatest capital allocator of all time, Elon Musk. Like you should be pumped about that because your basically money was being managed by Biden, who's dying, and his team of money suckers, to now the smartest guy in the world who's made himself the richest person. Like now you're with him now. It's like, this guy's gonna be good. So I feel like the capital allocation of the US, that's what gets me excited, is like how efficiently and how big impact exciting projects could we spend, like New York to LA Hyperloop, or I don't know, like maybe you guys have some crazy moonshots of what is going to unfold, you know?
I mean, it enables so much, right? I think the one point you made around like the Andrea's post was brilliant. We'll put it up here, but but make sure we have a link for it in the description below for all the other stuff we've done as well that we mentioned. But the whole concept around the taxpayers' money not being respected the way it should have, it's so obvious that's what's happened. You don't get to 17% approval rating, and you don't get to the Pentagon missing its audit for 7 years in a row. You don't get to hundreds of $billions of known waste and fraud every year that the government just writes off. You don't get things from USAID and FEMA and the Department of Education and the Pentagon. All these stories about how just outright crazy mismanaged our money was. And here the craziest thing is that money, okay? That money comes from tens of millions of people that work extremely hard every single day to have a life that they want, where they part away with part of their paycheck, and then somehow that taxpayer, there's not too much sympathy for them. It's like, well, these things are important, but yeah, it's wasteful, but it's just it's just how it is. That's just how it is. Fuck you. Like, you know how hard these people fucking work? That's the shit that fucking drives me nuts. Like literally just live with regular people and see their struggle. Half of this country can't, they live paycheck to paycheck. $1,000 surprise bill fucking bankrupts them. And I'm gonna stop because I'm really gonna start getting really fucking mad.
Actually, no, I really think you're onto a big point though, because the whole tax rate thing, it's like, if you have enough money, do you really give a shit about your tax rate? It's not changing your lifestyle. If you're actually living paycheck to paycheck, even though your tax rate percentage may be lower, that's like $1 in your pocket that matters. So
exactly,
like that's what's so crazy to me is like it's stealing money from like the people who really need it, and so that's why like this whole narrative of Elon stealing the money is so backwards.
It's fucking insane when the politicians have been exactly.
And that's why it's like Bernie and Elizabeth Warren are being like, Elon Musk is taking money away from the poor children. It's like, wait, you guys are the millionaires who've been grifting off the American public, who've been taking money that should have been going to the hardworking people. So it's just so funny how it's literal upside down world. Like that's what hit me when I flipped my election tendencies. I was like, we live in an upside down world. Like
do.
you're worth hundreds of millions sucking money from the government, but then you blame Elon Musk who's taking nothing. And it's literally our number one taxpayer, our number one guap giver was Elon Musk. Like, so I think there's like, it's crazy. It's crazy. But I think it's going to change, and like it needed to happen. I think a lot of, and it's a fluid situation. This is what I keep coming back to. Like, this isn't a like a screenshot of this is what everyone thinks and that's how they think. People are changing. That's why I tell my story of like, I've always voted Democrat. Like I thought RFK was dope. Like he cleaned up the Hudson River. You're a New Yorker. You know how hard that is. Like, come on. I lived in New York for 10 years. I'm like, this guy's done, second to Elon Musk, one of the most impressive things I've ever heard of, tackling the Hudson River. So I was a big RFK fan, but I don't know. So, or Hans, did you want to?
Yeah, can you double click on it for just a second, Gally? For people that who used to vote Democrat and now they voted for Trump this last election, how big of a deal was that for them? Because I know, like, for me personally, that was a huge deal. I was not planning to vote for Trump coming into this term. I was excited about RFK. Like, if Tulsi had run for president, I'd have voted for Tulsi. Like, these people from the center left that have all, like, not only been driven out of the Democratic Party, but then actually allied with Trump. Like, how much does that change normal Democratic voters' views as far as your like personal experience?
I mean, look, that's what convinced me. It's like when the facts change, so does my mind. It's like all my favorite Democrats said the Democratic Party was corrupt and joined Trump. It's like, I don't know. It's like, I'm just following, and so I think for a lot of people, it's like this idea that they're learning more and more. Like this doubt of the mainstream media is there, but it doesn't happen overnight for a lot of people. And maybe they haven't been following Tesla and Elon Musk. They don't know how this playbook's been done over and over again. But eventually, I think people are like, that's why I keep saying it's like a moving thing. Like, I think it's day by day. I think more people are becoming supportive of Elon Musk and Donald Trump, or at least open to that idea, especially in these like hater camps. Because I think it reached a crescendo where it's just everything is the most hated possible with Elon Musk. It can't get worse than that. And then people start questioning it of like, maybe he's not that, like, what did he really do? And that's what's so funny to me. It's like, they can't even come up with a scandal about Elon Musk because there isn't a scandal. Like, they can't come out with like some sort of like girlfriend or bad, like there isn't even one, because he's just been a good guy, which is crazy. But so I think it's so hard to pinpoint on what it is, but I just feel like the general trust in the legacy media, we all know about that. I think that's just been falling, and people are starting to slowly question. But I think it's happening every day, because like I'm having these more conversations even in Seattle, and it's like, even if it's like, now there's difference of like, we don't talk politics, but a lot of people know that like I'm probably supporting of Elon and Trump, and like that's fine. And like they know like some of my homies are too. And we'll be at dinner parties and we won't talk about it, but that's different from 4 years ago when everyone assumed everyone was liberal no matter what. There's not even a question. Now it's like, oh, half the people at this Seattle dinner party probably are Trump or Elon's. We kind of think that's crazy, but who gives a shit? We'll still all hang out. So that, to me, that's that amazing. Shows social acceptance. Like, I think it's not that crazy. And it's like, yeah, it actually kind of thing. Like, I wouldn't, it's like my family will make fun of me for that, but I don't know. So I think that's where I kind of feel it changing. Like, it's okay to be a Trumper in Seattle now, even if people aren't going to like you. Most people are like, I kind of get it. I thought DEI went too far too. Like, so
that's amazing. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, it is great. And I think it's honestly like a hard work. Like, I have had to, there's definitely people I lied to about it. And I was super scared to tell people that I was like supporting Trump at first, but then it's kind of like, oh, okay.
That's why I think the point you made around like it reminds you of the story arc of Tesla. It reminds you of the story arc in Tesla back in 2017, where we had like quote unquote insider knowledge, but all we did was just pay attention to the story. It's just the rest of the world didn't catch up because they were just omitting the story, either through legacy media or whatever. Go ahead, Hans, you want to jump in?
I was gonna say, we listened to management and like the financials instead of legacy media coverage.
Yeah, we go to the source, right?
Yeah.
I think
I'm tired of being Elon fanboys. We need to get rebranded as like Elon's top schemers. Like they've been ahead of the curve on every single Elon Musk initiative. Like they're building the future with him. Like these people should be looked at as like thought leaders. Like it's an Elon Musk fanboy. Like that writes me off. It's like, oh, like actually scheming and finding the most successful person and like aligning my career perfectly with his success in a super smart scheme, just like you guys are doing, to like like, it's not like we're Elon Musk fans. It's like we're fans of the dope future. It just happens to be that he's building it. You know, like I was looking for the most disruptive companies. That's like what I was obsessed with. Hyperchange, disruptive innovation, making things more sustainable. And I was like, well, Elon's doing this. So that's cool. Like, none of us started as fans. We all started as like fans of the technology. Like, you know,
exactly.
So it's, and that's like another reason of the media is so interesting. It's like, why don't they reframe it as like Elon fanboy or person?
That's not going to get clicks. Like, that's not going to get clicks. I mean, obviously, which one would you rather go with? You know, it's like, it's such a good point. I mean, the technologies and the positive future that we all want, like, so many people are positive. You know, like the other thing you have to remember too is, like, for as many haters as Elon has, let's say, he's got like probably 3x the fans, honestly, or 5x the people that just don't really pay attention that much, to just want to have a good future. That's the most of the people. And they're like, oh, okay, this is going on with Doge. Sounds kind of crazy. I hope they figure it out. Anyway, I want to go to the park, right? That's how most people function. We're the fucking psychos here that are trying to dissect every nuance that's going on, so that the people that listen to us that are interested in the story understand where it could end up a little bit better, right? Hopefully from an objective viewpoint. We'll all have our biases, but we're trying to be as objective as possible, right? And we have a track record of calling this shit correctly many times when it comes to this specific individual, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say with Galley's, comment about us being called Elon Musk fanboys. Is like, you can call us Elon Musk fanboys if you want to, but like, let's just look at the tape. Whose predictions come out to be consistently accurate, and whose predictions come out to be consistently baloney sauce? Yeah. Like, it's not hard to compare people's returns or, any number of things. It's like, hey, we thought that this would happen. And, there have been places where the vision hasn't come to fruition as much as we thought it would. But like, overall, we've been pretty generally correct about things. Like, we called when Elon Musk took over X, it's going to be super chaotic. It's going to be mega painful. There's going to be mega noise. And then a couple years later, it's going to be like the most powerful platform in the world, and they're going to be profitable, and everything's going to be okay. And everyone's going to forget about how Twitter was dying. Like, we made those types of predictions before any of that stuff happened. And then lo and behold, like, what happened? And it's not like that's a hard prediction to make. Like, all you have to do is look at a little bit of history. And I think that there are a lot of people who would have made that prediction, but you couldn't make that prediction from a news desk. Like, you'd get fired.
And here's what's interesting about that, right? So we use data, we try to use historical examples, we try to look at the trend of how something's moving to try and understand how it could end up. The reason why I'm so optimistic about what's happening with this current administration, with Trump and Doge specifically, is if you look at the amount of change that has happened in the last 2 to 3 weeks, it is absolutely unprecedented. Absolutely, totally unprecedented. We went from one of the slowest, most decrepit, dead administrations we've ever had, most corrupt administration we've ever had, trying to hide the insanity at the border, trying to hide the fact they were actively silencing Americans in social media, violating their First Amendment, actively lying about the COVID vaccine, actively lying about the side effects, right? Just active corruption. We go from that type of administration to one that is like, okay, everything needs to change now. And then bang, bang, bang. Day after day after day after day. Again, don't agree with all of it, but the change is obvious and the movement is obvious, and the people involved have a track record of massive positive change.
And it's obviously generally in the right direction. Like, exactly. Yeah, maybe not everything is perfect, but it's definitely going in the right direction for a change.
Buying Gaza, kind of a fucking crazy idea. What the hell is that? I don't get it. Okay, I'll have to,
But
what
buying
is that?
Greenland?
I'm okay with that one.
That one is like, I don't know.
Come on, Canada, you're next.
Oh, I got pulled over in Canada like 4 days ago and caught me a tariff joke. He was like, "I'm not going to give you a tariff, just a joke." I was like, I loved it. Like, we're all having fun. Like, it was fine.
That's great.
Tensions with Canada are great. I was just in Whistler.
yeah, they're good people up there.
Let me follow up real quick with just the last. I did rerun the sentiment analysis again in Perplexity for anyone who was really curious on how that was going to go. So when I run it against Elon Musk's name and his involvement in government, it flips and it says 80% negative, 20% positive. And it's not based on views necessarily. It's like it was having a hard time tying views to titles, but so it's based on, headlines that it's seeing in its survey. But then I go look at it, and literally every single one of the videos that it's citing is from a mainstream media outlet, except for two. So one Herbert video, and there was one other podcast. And so it's like the search results of the YouTube videos are just pulling in that mainstream media bias. Like it's not necessarily authentic user generated content on YouTube that would represent, the general person's view.
Fascinating. Good to know. Go ahead, Gilly.
Love it. I think I'm back to my idea. There's just huge opportunity to spread the positive word about Doge, and I hope people do it. And the last thing I wrote down was how fun it's going to be to read Tesla's financial statements in 2028.
Oh, yeah. Dude. Okay. What's going to be the biggest line item on the P&L in 2028?
I think it's FSD. Hopefully it's getting close to FSD. Like once these FSD hits, like that's the flip side. Is like I love Waymo. Like people can hate on Waymo, but I'm like, that is such a cool business. They move slow like a turtle for freaking 20 years getting this right, and they've just executed flawlessly. Maybe they're slow, but 100 million revenue run rate, fully self-driving cars, like dope. That is like a business I want to own. I'm like, dude, these guys are crushing it. So now I'm getting even more excited because Tesla's going to do that with Elon Musk at the helm, and we're going to get this revenue line item that's just every quarter expanding more cities, every single quarter just more and more rides. It's going to be a 5-year just crescendo of earnings growth that's going to be legendary. But it's just
so I think Cybercab directly puts Waymo out of business because the cost per mile is going to be impossible for Waymo to fight with Tesla, because Tesla's approach, like they can Waymo survive at $1 per mile? Like
I think Waymo's like, maybe Waymo gets fried eventually, but I just think everyone else is so fried first. Like I got in the Waymo and I was like, this is dope. It's the future. Like they've disrupted the human driver. That is the disruption. Every other ecosystem that relies on the human driver is done. Then we can worry about which AI driver is better. But for now, I think Waymo's dope. And I think it has a ton of value. And I don't think it'll be a fully winner take all thing. I think there could be several huge players. And I look at Tesla and Waymo as the two leaders right now. And I'm more toast about like Rivian is I'm like, who's going to buy the R2? No one's going to want to buy a car. What about Ford? What about GM? What about Honda? What about Polestar? What about Volkswagen? None of these companies are equipped for the change in car ownership that's going to occur. Those are the people that are toast, not, I think Waymo, you know what I mean? That maybe Waymo could be something else, but that's just the way I'm thinking about the real change that's happening is like, and what's Uber stock is fascinating. I have a little tidbit for you guys because Bill Ackman just bought like 3 billion of Uber stock.
I saw that.
So I had a scheme sesh with Bill Ackman on the phone years ago when he was trying to sell a big piece of his land to Elon to build the Texas Gigafactory. And I remember talking to him and being like, bro, like, what are you dinking around with these stocks? Buy Tesla stock. This is like 4 years ago. It's way before, like, and he was just like, yeah, my sister says she loves her Tesla and everyone loves the product, but I don't know. I'm still looking into it. And then now he comes out and he's buying Uber stock. And I'm like, you still haven't figured out how to buy Tesla? Like, I don't even know. This is probably going to get me in trouble, but I did think I got tipsy and texted him that he should buy Tesla stock a few years ago. This was January 26, 2022. Still not in Tesla. We have a 10-bagger left. That was my, I don't know. So I'm like, what the hell is, like, that's what I'm fascinated by, like, these people who, like, you think he would get Elon, but it's like, I don't know. What is the bull case? Uber, I don't know. But I also think Uber's in a better position than like Ford or GM because they're nimble. They're a network. They actually like solve people's problems. They have a consumer relationship. Like, I think Uber is going to be a very interesting Switzerland in this, ecosystem. Like, I'm trying to think really ahead. It's like, it's not just going to be Tesla. Everyone else just gets crushed. We're having a whole new ecosystem emerge here.
For sure.
And so I'm very curious to see how Uber does because, yeah, I'm just curious.
I mean, for them to survive and thrive, like it has to involve some other self-driving technology provider besides Tesla, who like over the long term. But all of these conversations, whether it's Uber, whether even GM and some of the other companies, makes me think of the Nikola story. Like it was obvious to so many people that was a scam and that company was going nowhere. Like it took years for even that, like no revenue, no product company to basically die. So, that is the thing that I think about, is just like sometimes these things that are large, like it's true that their challenges are overwhelming, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to zero tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. Yeah, I mean, I don't understand Uber's value proposition when their entire thing is connecting a human that needs a car to a human that has a car, and when you remove the human from the car, all they're doing is connecting a human to a car that doesn't have a driver, but they have to add a markup to that price with a car that's going to be more expensive per mile than the Tesla solution, which they're going to put on their own network. So it's like, okay, what is the... So unless you differentiate from a feature set perspective, unless you start offering like I don't know, hot tubs in a freaking self-driving car or a disco ball with a mini fridge, like how else would you differentiate yourself from Tesla? I sincerely don't understand their value proposition in a world where Tesla can have millions of self-driving cars in the country. I don't get it. But again, I could be wrong. Just like I have been on 1,000 different things. So okay, all right, Gally, we'll let you go. You're awesome.
Thanks,
dude.
Farzad. Thanks, Hans. Great scheming with y'all. Have a great day. Always a pleasure to join the channel. So thank you.